and was never seen again. Sometimes in advertising, you get to work on a dream account. For me, I got to produce an ad for the Beatles when their anthology book came out. For my friend David G., it was working on a James Bond project. David was a James Bond nerd. He loved James Bond movies. He loved everything James Bond. At the time, David was the creative director for the Toronto International Film Festival, or TIFF as it's called. The TIFF building in Toronto has a large gallery space dedicated to film-based exhibitions. And TIFF had signed an agreement to host a big touring exhibition celebrating 50 years of James Bond films on loan from the Barbican, London, England's huge cultural arts centre, the largest in Europe. In other words, this was a big deal. It was such a big deal, David G. was sent over to have a meeting not only with the Barbican people, but with the head of the studio that owns the James Bond franchise. In that meeting, the studio head explicitly told David he could not use any James Bond imagery in the advertising. No images, no film stills, no hats, no cars, no guns, no villains, no shots of any actors who played James Bond, no nothing. That made the advertising a bit of a challenge. How do you advertise a James Bond exhibit if you can't show anything from James Bond? But David is a creative guy, so he went back to Toronto and he and his team managed to come up with a really smart advertising campaign despite the limitation of not being able to use one iota of existing James Bond imagery. Then, David flew back to London to present his ideas to the studio head. He began the meeting by saying what an honor it was, both professionally and personally, to be working on a James Bond project. Then he started to show his James Bond free ideas that promoted the James Bond exhibit. As he revealed each successive piece, the studio head's eyebrows rose as quickly as her face and mood sank. To add to the misery, her phone rang every 5 minutes, prompting her to leave the room over and over again. Then she would re-enter the boardroom, sit down, cross her arms, and say, "Go on." This fractured in-and-out meeting went on for over an hour. Finally, David got to the end of his presentation and asked if there were any questions. He was met by a bitter, icy silence. Then the studio head said, "Can you give me one good reason why you didn't use any of our James Bond imagery?" David and the studio head just stared at each other for a moment. Then David blurted out, "That would have certainly made it easier, but you yourself told me I couldn't use any Bond images." They just stared at each other for what seemed like an eternity. Luckily, her phone rang again. She looked down and said, "Sorry, it's Daniel Craig," and left the room. Only in advertising. When I reached out to my advertising colleagues and asked them to send me their most outrageous stories, I was inundated with so many good ones. I could probably do a series of episodes on this amusing topic, and I still couldn't fit them all in. The advertising business is a mixture of high pressure, impossible deadlines, and demanding clients. It's a business where millions of dollars are thrown around, and one share point can mean the difference between success and being fired. As you can see, so much can still go wrong. And you can also see the power that clients wield over their advertising agencies. But in the trenches of marketing, there are some very smart, highly creative people who have battle scars, but they can still laugh at it all at the end of the day. And that's the key to every high-stress career. You take the work seriously, but not yourself when you're under the influence. I'm Terry O'Reilly. This episode was recorded in the Terrestream Mobile Recording Studio. Producer, Debbie O'Reilly. Sound engineer, Jeff Devine. Theme music by Ari Posner and Ian Lefevre. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Terry O Influence. See you next week.
Fun fact. Neil Diamond sang in his high school glee club with Barbra Streisand 20 years before they recorded You Don't Send Me Flowers Anymore in 1978.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
Saturday, March 23rd, we bid farewell to the 18th Prime Minister of Canada. CBC News presents the state funeral for the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney. Tune into CBC, CBC News Network, or CBC News Explore at 9 a.m. Eastern and on CBC Radio 1 at 10:30 a.m. Eastern for live, comprehensive coverage. Let us come together in remembrance. The state funeral for Brian Mulroney, Saturday, March 23rd on CBC, Canada's trusted news source.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen app.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at minus 8 degrees with mostly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. Today, people in Lac du Bonnet got news they've been waiting decades to hear.
It is good news. We are here to announce construction of a personal care home for Lac du Bonnet for real this time.
Premier Wab Kinew today announcing a 95-bed personal care home to be built in the eastern Manitoba community. It'll replace the existing 30-bed facility at an estimated cost of just over $66 million. It's not the first time people in Lac du Bonnet have been promised a new personal care home. Discussions started within the community 3 decades ago. Then there were announcements both in 2012 and in 2017, but it never happened. Kinew says the money this time is in the budget.
We're not here to announce a commitment or a plan or feasibility. We're here to say there will be shovels in the ground this year.
That is expected to open in 2027. The future of Winnipeg's most famous intersection will be determined at City Hall today. As the CBC's Cameron McLean reports, Council is set to vote on letting pedestrians across Portage and Main.
The debate over whether to remove the barricades blocking pedestrian access at Portage and Main has reached a key moment. Mayor Scott Gillingham and his inner circle voted last week to open the intersection to foot traffic. That plan also calls for beginning the process of decommissioning the city-owned underground circus. Now, Council will cast the final vote. Gillingham says the estimated $73 million cost to repair the membrane protecting the concourse is too much. A city report estimates the decommissioning work could cost $20 to $50 million, but further study is needed. Gillingham says he expects his plan has enough support on council to pass, but it will not be unanimous. The vote is expected to happen later today. If it passes, the motion calls for the intersection to reopen by July 1st, 2025. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some Winnipeg gas stations are starting to feel the impact of the Imperial Oil Pipeline shutdown. Graham Carlisle at Domo's Western Canada headquarters in Winnipeg says they had a close call earlier this week. The Domo on Donald came close to running dry. But Carlisle says supply arrived in time.
We have contracted haulers that do our hauling for us. And so, instead of going out to the terminal out on Henderson Highway or the Shell terminal in St. Boniface, we're just having to go a little bit further afield. So Gretna, Regina, Saskatoon, and we're trucking it in from those terminals instead. So just working a little bit harder to get it here.
This morning, CBC crews saw another Winnipeg station down to just one pump, and 3 others have closed outright. Imperial Oil shut down its pipeline from Gretna to Winnipeg on Friday after workers identified a strain on a portion of the line near St. Adolphe. It's expected to take 3 months to fix. The European Union is making headway on a plan that could significantly bolster Ukraine's continued fight against Russia. It involves using profits from frozen Russian assets to buy weapons and ammunition for Kyiv. The money could amount to as much as $4.5 billion each year. Luxembourg Prime Minister Luc Frieden says the bloc wrestled with the plan for months due to legal concerns.
I think now it has become much clearer. We do not use the assets of Russian citizens, but assets of the Russian state, of the Russian central bank, and we do not use even those assets, but the revenues of those assets.
Russia accused the European Union of theft and warned it could retaliate if the plan moves forward. Ukraine's military faces shortages of ammunition and missiles as the war enters its third year. The United States is suing Apple.
Consumers should not have to pay higher prices because companies break the law.
The Justice Department, along with more than a dozen states, accused the smartphone company of shutting out competition and degrading user privacy. The antitrust lawsuit alleges Apple drives up prices for its products and forces developers to play by its rules. Attorney General Merrick Garland claims those behaviors have led to lower quality smartphones and fewer choices for consumers.
Apple has maintained its power not because of its superiority, because of its unlawful exclusionary behavior. Monopolies like Apple's threaten the free and fair markets upon which our economy is based.
Apple refutes the allegations, saying the legal action threatens the company's principles. Now to a warning from the United Nations about electronic waste.
To date, only 22% of e-waste has been collected and recycled in a good way, so the vast majority of e-waste is not managed in a correct manner.
That is Kees Baldy, the author of a report saying the world is on pace to generate more than 800 million tons of electronic waste by the year 2030. That's 80 million tons of old cell phones, laptops, and televisions. And the waste contains toxic or hazardous substances, including mercury. Among other recommendations, the report calls on manufacturers to start producing electronic products with a longer life cycle. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can go to cbc.ca/Manitoba. In Winnipeg today, a high of -4 with mainly sunny skies. In Brandon, a mix of sun and cloud and a high of -7. In Dauphin, a high of -7 with mainly sunny skies. Flin Flon, sunny and a high of -10 degrees. Thompson, you're seeing a chance of flurries, a high of -16, mainly sunny. And in Churchill, a mix of sun and cloud today with a slight chance of flurries and a high around -20 degrees.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM in Winnipeg, 97.9 FM in Brandon, 100.9 FM in Thompson, on your CBC Listen app, and on our CBC Manitoba YouTube live stream. It's Thursday, March 21st. My name is Chloe Friesen. I'm filling in for Marjorie Dowhouse. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Coming up, today is, as I said, 21st day of the third month of the year. It's a day to celebrate people with 3 copies of the 21st chromosome. It's World Down Syndrome Day. We'll speak to a Winkler mom whose family is celebrating. But first up on the show, the on-again, off-again Lac du Bonny Personal Care Home is back on again. We'll get the latest on the Manitoba community's struggle to have a place for their seniors to spend their golden years. As you heard in your CBC local news, the Lac du Bonny Personal Care Home is once again on the table. The project, originally promised by Sellinger's NDP in the 2010s, was put on hold by the Progressive Conservatives in 2017. The PCs revived the project leading up to the October election, but the NDP delayed it when they came to power. Today, the Premier announced that there will be money in the provincial budget for the care home. Here's Premier Wab Kinew.
Well, as somebody who grew up in a small community, I know how difficult it is to keep a secret. I gotta say the amazing turnout here today is maybe a good reminder of that. One thing that I actually did find a little surprising is, folks wondering like, what's it all about? Is it good news or bad news? And so let me just cut straight to the chase and just say it is good news. We are here to announce construction of a personal care home for Lac du Bonnet for real this time. Wow. We got to get you out more often. That's great. I would like to thank everyone in the community and in the region for your patience. This is something that's been a long time coming. I know the initial announcement was made some 12 years ago, and the work, I know, has begun even longer ago than that. And that's why I said for real this time. We're not here to announce a commitment or a plan or feasibility. We're here to say there will be shovels in the ground this year. Clearly this is important to Lac du Bonnet. Clearly this is important to the whole region. So many folks from across the Eastman region here today. I want to thank you all for driving out and for taking time. And speaking to people, even just a few minutes that we had before the announcement began, we heard stories about why this is needed so that we can have good quality care close to home. And I want to say that it's needed for the region for sure, but this is needed provincially. Our whole province is short of long-term care beds. And that's having a big impact on seniors, a big impact on families, but it's also having an impact on our hospitals. And so this investment is needed in order for us to be able to improve healthcare here, but also right across Manitoba. And for me, one of the big lessons of COVID, and believe you me, like everyone else, I want to put COVID in the rearview mirror. I don't want to revisit the pandemic. But think of all the sacrifices we made over the last few years. The birthday parties, the Christmas celebrations, the get-togethers that we gave up. The memories that we should have been able to make with one another that we sacrificed in order to get through that period together. To me, to make good on all that sacrifice means that we had to learn the lessons of that experience, of the pandemic. And seniors care and the responsibility of us collectively as a province of Manitoba to do better by our seniors, to me, is one of the most crucial, fundamental lessons of the pandemic. When we're talking seniors, we're talking about the people who taught us, the people who served us meals, the people who fought in the wars to protect our freedom and democracy, the people who literally built the society that we know and love today. And it seems to me that we have a basic duty, responsibility, and obligation to do right by that generation who were there for us in our time of need when they approached their time of need as well. And so this commitment to this personal care home and the others that we're going to build over the next 4 years is an investment in healthcare. It's an investment in seniors care. But most importantly, it's these generations of Manitobans stepping up and fulfilling our responsibility to you, the greatest generation.
That was Premier Wab Kinew. Pat Porth is with the Two Rivers Seniors Resource Council, and she shared her feelings on the announcement.
Thank you for coming to visit Lac du Bonnet in eastern Manitoba. You kind of think that maybe the government has forgotten about us. And yes, I'm one of those people as well who has been involved in some form of the 20 years plus of the personal care home being in progress. So today it is wonderful to be part of this announcement. I'm very passionate about my seniors, and I try to do whatever I can within my guidelines. And it's really nice to know that when now, once people age out of home, like the big buzzword is aging in place. Well, we have a lot of people who have aged out of their place. And it's pretty dire. And once home care and our services seniors program can no longer provide services to keep them in their home as long as possible, they now will have a new home, a new residence, and be allowed again to remain in their community amongst friends and family. And like I say, I can't say enough about how thankful I am to hear this announcement. And I will certainly continue to work with whoever requires assistance, wherever it may be, small or large, in order to make sure that this project moves forward. So thank you again for coming out with this announcement and remembering Eastman. Thank you very much.
Pat Porth is with the Two Rivers Seniors Resource Council.
Brady Keeper and Bridget Laquette both played here. What future star will you see this year? The Manitoba Indigenous Cultural Education Center Annual Indigenous Minor Hockey Tournament is back March 22nd to 24th at the Hockey for All Center. The best Indigenous minor hockey players in Manitoba come together in competition, and CBC is a proud sponsor. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
It is 12:14. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in today for Marjorie Dowhouse. Thank you so much for joining us. Still to come on the show. When he ran for Reeve, Art Jonassen said he didn't come from either of the big two towns of Ashern or Eriksdale, so he was a great choice to represent the whole West Interlake. It's now been 10 years since rural amalgamation, and he'll be here to talk about the benefits, the challenges, and what comes next. As well, coming up, a Winkler mom says her two kids with Down syndrome are special, but also get on each other's nerves just like any other preteen. We'll chat with her on how the family is celebrating World Down Syndrome Day today. But first, a quick look at your weather forecast. Mainly sunny across the province today, with a slim chance of flurries tonight in extreme southwestern Manitoba. And early modeling suggests a return to more seasonal, maybe springtime weather by the end of next week. Don't take my word for it. Riley Lachuk, weather specialist, will be back here with some more details on that. A few temperatures around the province here. Brandon, you're mostly cloudy today, sitting at -10. Churchill at the airport, ice crystals at -26. Dauphin, sunny, -13. In Gimli, you're sitting at -10. Morden is our hotspot at -5. Heading to Thompson, you folks are mainly sunny at -20. Here in Winnipeg at the Forks, sitting at -7. Today, a family in Winkler is wearing mismatched socks. And it's not due to a lack of laundry or matching pairs. It's all about today, to celebrate World Down Syndrome Day. Two of Tracy's 5 kids, Maddie and Elijah, have Down syndrome. They were both born with an extra copy of their 21st chromosome. Tracy joins us now from Winkler. Hi, Tracy. Happy World Down Syndrome Day.
Hi.
Now, first, can you tell us more about the mismatched socks? Why is the whole family wearing them today?
We're wearing them today just to kind of represent for my 2 kiddos that children with Down syndrome aren't alone in, that's basically the reason why we want to celebrate with them.
It also sounds just like a lot of fun to mismatch your socks on purpose.
Definitely. Yep, my teenagers are loving it today too.
Now, how old are Maddie and Elijah, and what are their personalities like?
Maddie is 14. She's grade 9. She is your typical teenager. Happy one day, not quite so happy the next, but she's usually very social. She loves being with her peers. And Elijah is 12. He is in grade 6. He, as well, is also very social. He loves being a bit of a goofball, a little bit comedian in him. So, yeah.
I know you have 5 kids. What's their relationship with each other, Maddie and Elijah?
Their relationship with each other is actually pretty unique. They're pretty empathetic with each other. If one's a little bit upset, the other one's as well. They have a pretty caring relationship with one another, and their siblings love it too. They are right in there, and my older son, Josh, loves playing catch with Elijah and just goofing around.
Now, I want to take it back to 14 years ago when you first found out that Maddie had Down syndrome. What was that like?
That was a little bit tough. Maddie was born early, so she was born 7 weeks early, so she was pretty tiny. So we had the whole typical NICU stay, but just the emotions of realizing that you're going to have a child with Down syndrome was a little bit not what we had expected. Not that it wasn't unique and beautiful in its own way, but it just wasn't quite what we had thought originally. And it just kind of grew from there. She was our fighter, and she blossomed from there, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful young lady.
Did you have any previous knowledge about Down syndrome?
I did not have a lot of previous knowledge. I went to high school with one boy that had Down syndrome, but I didn't have a lot of experience with it growing up at all.
What have Maddie and Elijah brought not only to your family but to the community and their friends?
They have brought in us a whole different sense of belonging. Like they kind of squish us all together and just make you feel special. And Elijah's smile can turn your frown upside down on a tough day. So yeah, just very, very uplifting, very, very nice.
This is a big day in your family, lots of celebrating. Why do you think it's so important to celebrate this day?
I think it's very important. I think we're all special in our own unique way, but especially children with Down syndrome. It's like having an apple and an orange. They're very different, but very, very much the same for my two. And we just want to celebrate all the wonderful things that they've accomplished and the goals that they're striving to do. So,
what do you think people need to know about Down syndrome if they don't have a lot of knowledge about it?
I think, just like everybody else, my children are just a normal child. This is just another part that's added on to them that makes them unique and special. And just like everybody else, like I said, they're just a little bit extra, and that little bit extra that just gives you that sparkle and that smile.
Now, I mentioned celebrations. What is the family doing to celebrate today?
We already had a lunch party.
Very nice.
Yeah. And then we'll have a different party tonight. The schools obviously are involved too. We had Mismatched Socks Day today at the kiddos' schools, and they had their shirts as well. And so it's been a wonderful day celebrating all their different gifts and aspects and wonderfulness they bring to our lives.
What is it like seeing the schools, their friends in the community kind of gather to celebrate with you?
It's wonderful. I can't really describe it. It's just this great community that, come alongside me and help me celebrate with my kiddos. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
Now, make sure you say Happy Down Syndrome Day to Maddie and Elijah from us here at CBC Manitoba. And Tracy, thank you for joining us.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Tracy Dick is a mom from Winkler, and today is World Down Syndrome Day.
Frequencies with Errol Nazareth.
The world is alive with sound, whether across the street or across the pond, from back home or in your own backyard. Every place has a sound, and every person has a story. Discover songs and stories from people and communities across Canada and around the world.
Frequencies with host Errol Nazareth. Episodes available on demand on the CBC Listen app.
Thanks for tuning in to Radio Noon. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marjorie Dowhouse. Thank you to Dylan Longhurst behind the boards, our tech and director today. And thank you to Travis Peterson running that live stream on our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. Thanks for tuning in there. It's now time for a visit from our word nerd. This week's topic happens to be the name of one of this year's Juno nominees. Here's Elizabeth Withy with the story of Talk.
The Junos are this weekend, and among the many nominated artists is the musician Talk. He's an Ottawa native with a slew of hits. Talk even sings about talking.
Talk to me, talk to me, after all this alcohol.
Which had me thinking about the word talk, as in speak, say something, have a conversation. The word talk dates back to the 1200s. It's believed to come from the Middle English word tale, as in a story, because that's, of course, what we're doing when we talk. Add a K to that base word, tale or tell, and voila, talk. It's the same for the word hear, which relates to hark, and smile, which relates to smirk. Talk in the sense of tattling or fessing up didn't come along until the 1820s. And by the 1960s, with the advent of broadcast television and radio, along came phrases like talking over someone, as well as talk show and, talk radio. We have TV to thank for the popularity of the phrase talking head because of that tight shot or a close-up of a person saying something on the tube, typically a news anchor. But there were talking heads long before news. In magic, there's the classic talking head on a plate illusion. And in mythology, there are oodles of actual talking heads. Bran the Blessed in Celtic lore, a giant whose head continued to speak for years after Bran's death. Orpheus, the Greek hero, whose head sang sad songs along the river Hebrus and then continued to prophesize at his oracle on Lesbos. And in Norse mythology, the wise one, Mimir. Mimir was beheaded, but the god Odin preserved Mimir's head, with magic herbs apparently, and famously sought advice from it. Now you're talking. For CBC Radio, I'm Elizabeth Withy.
Thanks to Elizabeth Withy for that very musical edition of Word Nerd. And if there's a word you're wondering about, you can drop a line to wordnerd@cbc.ca. We're going to keep that music going. Up next, we have a tune from Winnipeg roots duo The Brothers Landreth off their 2013 album Let It Lie. This is Made Up Mind.
It starts out slow, with go ahead and go, and pretty soon the melody's like a rainstorm Penrose symphony. It starts out slow, it goes on and on for way too long. It always ends on a bad note. If you could dance at all, you'd dance alone. It goes on and on. The quiet behind the slamming door, the break of a heart that won't break no more. Getaway wheels in a straight line, serenade of a made-up mind. touch and it all make our mind.
From Winnipeg roots duo The Brothers Landreth, that was Made Up Mind off their album Let It Lie, which, fun fact, has won a Juno Award back in, I believe, 2015. They won the Juno Award for Roots and Traditional Album of the Year group. It's their one of 2 Juno Awards, and you're going to want to tune into the Junos. They're happening this Sunday. They'll be here in no time. Still to come on Radio Noon, 2 men from Arborg, Manitoba, who were switched at birth in 1955, met for the first time on Tuesday. Now they're set to get a formal apology from Premier Wab Kinew later today. We'll hear from one of the men. That's coming up as well. We will take you to Ashern, where Marcin Marcusa was sitting with the Reeve at an auction mart talking about the rural economy and the role of hundreds of cattle producers in that area. He actually used to be one. We'll bring you to our Community in Focus. That's coming up here on Radio Noon. Stay tuned, lots to come. Your CBC Local News with Matt Humphrey is next.
This is CBC News. Thank you, Chloe. At 12:30, we're at -7 degrees with mostly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Hello there. People in Lac du Bonny will finally get a new personal care home. It's been talked about for decades. There were even announcements in 2012 and 2017 that one would be built, but nothing happened. Premier Wab Kinew was in the eastern Manitoba town today to say the 95-bed facility is in the budget. And he says shovels will be in the ground soon to make it a reality. Kinew says it's necessary.
It's needed for the region for sure, but this is needed provincially. Our whole province is short of long-term care beds, and that's having a big impact on seniors, a big impact on families, but it's also having an impact on our hospitals.
Again, Kinew says the $66.4 million for the project is in next month's budget. The care home is expected to be open in 2027. The debate over whether to remove the barricades blocking pedestrian access at Portage and Main has reached a key moment. Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham and his inner circle voted last week to open the intersection to foot traffic. The plan also calls for beginning the process of decommissioning the city-owned underground circus. Now, today, Council will cast the final vote. Gillingham says the estimated $73 million, the cost to repair the membrane protecting the underground concourse, is just too much. A city report estimates the decommissioning work could cost $20 to $50 million, but further study is needed. Gillingham says he expects his plan has enough support on council to pass, but it will not be unanimous. The vote is expected to happen later today. Winnipeg police are looking for 2 shoplifting suspects they say had a child with them during some of the thefts. Police say the thefts started in December. The man and woman are connected with 8 incidents where groceries and other items were stolen. The stores that were targeted were on Regent, Kenaston, and McPhillips. Police say a child under the age of 10 was present for 4 of the 8 incidents. And finally, the United States Justice Department has announced a sweeping antitrust lawsuit against Apple. The suit accuses the tech giant of engineering an illegal monopoly in the smartphone market. It claims Apple stifles innovation and uses its iPhone technology to, quote, engage in a sustained and illegal course of conduct, end quote. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app.
It's a good app.
Do you have an Apple phone?
I do have an Apple phone. I've been looking at this lawsuit.
It's interesting.
It's fascinating.
It's very interesting. I never got into it myself.
Oh, no, you're not an Apple person.
I'm a Samsung guy.
An orange person, perhaps.
No, I'm an orange guy. Bananas.
Yeah. Nice. Thanks, Matt.
Back soon.
CBC's Matt Humphrey with a look at your CBC local news. Riley Lachuk joins us now in studio, CBC weather specialist. Riley, you give us a little note about the weather so that we don't ask you a million questions per day. And you mentioned that we could see a return to more seasonal weather.
Hope on the horizon, Chloe.
There's hope on the horizon.
We're looking very long range at this point. Of course, the further out you go, the less
For sure.
For accuracy, I
Yeah,
guess
that's
there is.
probably a more appropriate word.
Probably, yeah, a little bit more. I was trying to think of the right word there.
Yeah.
But by the time we get into like the middle end of next week, it looks like we're returning to more seasonal conditions. But once again, take that with a grain of salt because lots of time between now and then.
We also we got to live in the moment.
We got to live in the moment. You're right. Another cool start to the day.
Okay.
And we're looking at cool temperatures once again through the afternoon, even as we head through the noon hour here. Minus 26 in both Churchill and Tuduli Lake right now. Gillam's at minus 24 right now. Here in the south, temperatures minus 7 to minus 10 across southern Manitoba. Minus 7s for both Portage and Winnipeg. Morden right now, kind of the outlier at minus 5 at the moment. Mainly sunny skies across the province. We are seeing a little bit of cloud creep into the southwest corner of the province as forecast today. We have that Clipper system that is moving across Saskatchewan, sinking south. So it will give us a miss, save for a little bit of cloud in the southwest and maybe some cloud in our neck of the woods here in the Red River Valley through the overnight period tonight, but certainly not getting that moisture, which is, I'll say, a bit unfortunate because we do need the moisture in southern Manitoba. So, yeah, this one giving us a bit of a miss here, but we will see some cloud cover. Slim chance of flurries in the southwest corner of the province overnight tonight. Tomorrow, we start with a mix of sun and clouds across the province, mainly sunny skies through the day once again tomorrow with a little bit of passing cloud, but otherwise not even a lot of wind to talk about either as we head into the weekend. We're looking at fairly calm conditions. Winds in northern Manitoba, 20 gusting 40 along the Hudson Bay coast. In southern Manitoba through the day, we're looking at winds northwest 10 or so. Could see some gusts even as high as about 20 through the afternoon today. We're looking at temperatures of minus 4 in Winnipeg this afternoon, minus 8 in Gimli, minus 6 in Brandon, with some of that cloud starting to creep into the Verdun-Melita region through the later part of the afternoon, minus 6 in Dauphin, and minus 16 in Thompson. Long range, minus 4 for Saturday, minus 4 for Sunday. Start to see some cloud moving in Sunday and some late day flurries Monday into Tuesday morning, and northeast winds Monday gusting to 50. We're seeing temperatures, a highest we were getting in the next 5 days, minus 2 in Winnipeg. But as we look at the 7-day forecast, things do return to above 0 by the time we get to the end of next week.
Happy spring.
Yeah. So, sunshine, yes, is nice, but will be a bit cooler temperature-wise in the next few days.
All right. Well, we know we can handle it, so
we can.
Thank you, Riley.
Not terribly cold temperatures.
Sounds good. Riley Lachuk with a look at your CBC weather forecast. He will be back on Up to Speed this afternoon from 3 till 6. The time is 12:36. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this week for Marjorie Dowhouse. Now, CBC Manitoba first met Art Jonassen when he was in an emergency situation during the 2011 flood. A cattle rancher in Vogar, Manitoba, who was loading up his cows to try and save them from the rising water. Today, Jonassen is the reeve of the RM of the West Interlake and represents hundreds of ranchers in this area, as well as the people in the communities of Ashern and Ericsdale, cottagers and seasonal visitors. This morning on Information Radio, Reeve Jonassen talked to Marcy Marcusa about the benefits and challenges of representing such a diverse population.
It's a challenge. We were sort of forced to amalgamate in 2014, which nobody really wanted to see it happen. It was, the RM of Ericsdale was doing fine on its own. The RM of Siglaness was struggling with the flood, but we're managing. But at the time, the province wanted to any municipality under 1,000 people had to amalgamate with the neighbors. So we were put into that position. So
this is coming up on 10 years of amalgamation, right? So what's been the greatest benefit, and what do you think is, you were talking to me off air about the younger generation being a big part of the success you think moving forward?
Yes, I think the big thing is the younger people know each other more. In the old, before the amalgamation, there was a lot of competition between towns along Number 6 Highway, and there was a great deal of competition between Ericsdale and Ashern. There was always a competition, and I think now we're seeing past that, I hope, and are looking at I know Eriksdale has their Roger Kimley Festival. They have a curling rink. Ashern doesn't have a curling rink, but we can share that, right?
Yep.
We have 2 hospitals within our municipality. I think we're the only municipality in Manitoba that has 2 hospitals, and they work really well together. Ashern is the further north hospital, so they are very busy from everyone north of Ashern. Ashern is the first hospital coming down number 6, but Eriksdale runs a terrific hospital as well.
So just so people can place it, Ashern and Eriksdale, we talk a lot about because they're the 2 main communities that are like town sites. So there's about 400 people in Eriksdale, about 700 here in Ashern. I think I got close numbers there.
Yeah,
close.
Pretty close. Yeah.
Do people worry about the healthcare situation? Because moving forward, we just heard about a nurse about changes coming to Lakeshore up the way from here in Ashern. What does the future of healthcare services in this West Interlake look like in the next while? Because the NDP also made the promise for the ER in Eriksdale. So, 20 minutes apart. Is all of that going to be coming to fruition? What's your sense of all this?
Well, a lot of these decisions were made by the province almost 8 years ago. Shared health.
The previous government, yeah.
Yeah, it was the NDP government.
Oh, sorry, previous government.
Yeah, previous government looked at changing up the healthcare system, and Shared Health was formed, and Shared Health had decided that they went all across the province and looked for ideas from municipalities, and we were all consulted, and what came back from that was people wanted services closer to home. They didn't want to have to all go to Winnipeg for all their services, and they wanted emergencies right now. If you were to have an emergency, you would have to be hauled right into Winnipeg because there were no emergency rooms. They just fixed you up, patched you up, and sent you into Winnipeg.
So if Eriksdale's getting new beds, we know that's happening. It's happening now.
Ashern.
Pardon me, Ashern. I'm pointing at the wrong. Yeah. I'm pointing out the window like people can see me. Ashern Hospital getting new beds. Eriksdale, a new ER. Do you have any timeline on that, or is that confirmed, or what other plans might be in the works for healthcare in Eriksdale?
Well, right now they're talking about an ambulance garage, a three bay ambulance garage going into Eriksdale, which is good for the community, and using it as a teaching garage as well. Like they're going to try to train people there. Ashern just got an expansion of 28 beds. Mm-hmm. And this was decided as a hub and spoke model for healthcare. There was going to be regional hubs and community hospitals, and so Ashern was chosen as a regional hub because it's furthest north and services the area north, and so they expanded the hospital. Actually, they replaced the old hospital with a new 28-bed, fully modern hospital that should be up and running next fall.
Next fall, I was going to ask you about timelines.
Yeah, next fall.
I know.
But the old hospital then is also going to be expanded into an emergency room as well. So they're expanding from 5 beds in the emergency room to 13 beds.
I know that Communities in Focus is obviously, we're here for our show, but it's a week-long endeavor, and we're covering so many different stories that'll be rolling out in the next while. Mm-hmm. And my colleague Bryce Hoy, I know, is going to have some healthcare stories coming up as well, looking at more detail. So I don't mean to rush you along. But I do want to ask you as the last question this morning, Art, what do you think is the future for the West Interlake? Like, what's the big thing you're most excited about for this area?
I look at this area is experiencing right now a new wave of immigration. We're all immigrants, and this, my ancestors came here 100 years ago, but there's new immigrants coming into our region, and I was reading. They had a reading week, and so I had an opportunity to read to the little
kids at the school.
Yeah, 4 and under. And we have a multinational classroom there. I think there was kids from the Philippines, kids from Korea, kids from Ukraine, kids from China, and all the local kids. It was a multinational classroom.
And that's change in terms of the diversity that's represented in this area.
That is the change. There's a lot of business owners coming, immigrant business owners coming into the area. Our challenge going forward is to incorporate those people into our communities. We have to open our doors to them and make them become part of our fabric.
Art Jonassen is the Reeve of the RM of West Interlake. He spoke this morning with Information Radio's Marcy Marcusa. Coming up on Radio Noon, the NDP provincial government is expected to give a formal apology to two men from Arborg who were switched at birth in 1955. We'll hear from one of the men coming up here on the show. But first, a bit of music. We have the latest from Manitoba supergroup Indian City. This song is about taking the good with the bad. It's called Strawberries and Champagne.
Buy me a cup of coffee and I'll be your best friend. And if you scratch my back, well, you get everything. Sooner or later, things will just right themselves, you see. Rather than backseat driving, won't you ride up front with me? I say, seasons need to change. If you're waiting for rainbows first, you have to put up with the rain. I said, oh, sweet pleasure and sweet pain. Your hand in mine, side by side, strawberries and champagne. Life is complicated business. We do what we can. Follow the road laid out by all our moms and dads. And the highs and lows, and the sticks and stones in our castles of steel and glass. Nothing lasts forever, baby. All this too shall pass. I say, seasons need to change. If you want a rainbow first, you have to put up with the rain. I said, oh, sweet pleasure and sweet pain. Your hand in mine, side by side, strawberries and champagne. Raise a glass 'cause we made it through. To me and you. Hey, seasons need to change. If you want a rainbow first, you have to put up with the rain. I said, oh, sweet pleasure and sweet pain. Your hand in mine, side by side, strawberries and champagne. Your hand in mine, side by side, strawberries and champagne.
That was Indian City with Strawberries and Champagne. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. And hello to the folks tuning into our CBC Manitoba YouTube live stream. Edward Ambrose and Richard Beauvais were switched at birth at a hospital in Manitoba in 1955. The two men were born at the same hospital in Arborg and were taken home by each other's biological parents. Ambrose thought he was Ukrainian most of his life, and Beauvais was raised Métis in a community near Lake Manitoba. Premier Wab Kinew is expected to apologize to the men in the Manitoba legislature later today. CBC's Karen Pauls spoke with Edward Ambrose yesterday about how he feels about the upcoming apology.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. You got something like this. It's great to get an apology of what happened. The apology, it seemed to have been a very hard thing for someone to come out and give an apology. For what reasons, we don't know. We don't know. But some sort of a compensation for the apology. I really don't know what else I can say, because I could be going over and over and over again, but it would be this, basically what I'm saying there. So,
is it a step in the right direction to hear that the government's sorry for what happened to you?
It is to get an apology. To me, an apology is it's something that is very, very truthful. But if it's someone that really doesn't know what the family has gone through, that's a different apology. But we can expect to get, I guess, what we expect, right? For an apology. So if you're going to go to a friend's place and if something was done wrong, you have to make an apology for something, even though even if something that was not happened in that type of manner, in some type of way. But and looking forward, the apology would be nice, and it would be nice for the apology if family would be there to actually hear an apology. If it's just me and Richard, it's an apology just for the two of us. But I don't think everyone can be there for an apology,
Well, and it has, like you said earlier, it has ripple effects, I guess. What was it like to meet him for the first time?
Well, when you see him in pictures, I guess that's easy. But to actually see him in person, it's a whole different feeling of someone, because he is there in the flesh in front of you, and you get to give a hug or thing like that, which is it means an awful lot for someone who is me and he is vice versa type thing.
Do you see your family in his features, in his face?
Mom and Dad Ambrose, my family I grew up with, the features of my father, which is his father, you can see it in him. The facial features and the features in Mom, it's there. You can see.
That must be bittersweet because they're not here anymore.
No. And it's just to think of something like this that had happened for both sides of our family, or the parents. How they would have felt if something like this had happened. Like, what kind of emotions would have gone through, something like this. And again, I guess we can only think ourselves of what the emotions would have been,
So many lost opportunities, hey?
Yeah. So in order for someone to truly apologize something like this, it's a great deal more, But as all we can accept is what we will be given for an apology. Meeting Richard for the first time. That's what I'm, kind of point towards, between the families and how we feel towards it, So
I'm sure there's a lot going on. Was yesterday the first time you met him in person?
This was the first time, yeah. Other than pictures or on the phone. It's a time that was lost. You'll never get that back.
Edward Ambrose speaking with CBC's Karen Pauls. He and Richard Beauvais were switched at birth in 1955. Their lawyer said the men would also like to receive a compensation package for the 68 years they spent without their biological families. The time is just about 12:54. I'm Chloe Friesen filling in for Marjorie Dowhouse here on Radio Noon. Thank you for tuning in. Brandon, you're mostly cloudy, sitting at -10 right now. Pilot Mound, -7. Our cold spot is Tadouli Lake at -26. And here in Winnipeg at the Forks, it is sitting at -7. We're almost at the end here of Radio Noon, but let's listen to some music to take us out. The latest single from Manitoba's Kelly Badeau, featuring collaboration from Afro duo Licks. This is 2.
On m'a dit de me méfier. Les beaux garçons comme toi, y en a plein partout. Pourtant j'ai failli craquer. Avec tes mots tout doux, mon cœur a fait boum boum. Je suis pas de celle qui tombe au premier rendez-vous. Faut plus que des flatteries pour remporter la course. Si je te donne tout, est-ce qu'en retour tu me donneras tout? Je veux pas qu'il y ait de secret entre nous. Je veux pas des tours. Oh, na 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 na. Si je te donne tout, promets-moi que tu me donneras tout. Quelle que soit ton histoire, je veux savoir tout. Je veux pas d'un fou. C'est comme ça passe ou ça casse. Tu sais, j'évite de faire des promesses, surtout celles qui sont difficiles à tenir. Moi je voudrais qu'on s'aime sans se retenir, donc je te donnerai des garanties. Intéresse, tu veux tout savoir sur moi, je t'intéresse. Je veux tout savoir sur toi, tu m'intéresses. Donc au finish notre amour sera intéressant. Et je veux que tu saches que je serai prêt à tout. Ou contre toi et moi ça finit jusqu'au bout. De toi je suis fou, mais je suis comme ça. Da, 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 da. Si je te donne tout, est-ce qu'en retour tu me donneras tout? Je veux pas qu'il y ait de secret entre nous. Je veux pas des tours. Oh, na 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 na. Si je te donne tout, promets-moi que tu me donneras tout. Quelle que soit ton histoire, je veux savoir tout. Je veux pas d'un fou. C'est comme ça passe ou ça casse. Ta maman t'a bien élevé, ça se voit bien dans tes manières. Tu me traites comme une reine, je crois bien que t'en vaut la peine. Avec moi t'auras rien à craindre, et tant qu'un ciel c'est l'essentiel. Chaque jour je prierai le ciel pour que ça prenne. Si je te donne tout,
That was Kelly Badeau featuring Licks with 2. We're coming to the end here of Radio Noon, but stay tuned to CBC Radio 1. Up to Speed is coming up at 3 p.m. And coming up on the show, we'll bring you your latest news, but we're also going to bring you this. A video game company is reviving a 90s title that many call the worst game ever made. Why should you play it today? We'll hear from CBC's gaming expert later today on Up to Speed, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. You're going to have to tune in. Up to Speed starts at 3 and goes until 6 p.m. That's with Faith Fundal. Tune in for that. Thank you for listening to Radio Noon today. I'm Chloe Friesen. I was filling in for Marjorie Dowhouse. A big thank you goes to Matt Humphrey and Riley Lachuk for bringing us our news and weather. Travis Peterson is on our YouTube live stream. Dylan Longhurst, our tech and director here on Radio Noon. Our show producer is Nellie Gonzalez. Our senior producer of audio is Leif Larson. Again, you're listening to CBC Radio 1. Tune in to Up to Speed, but also Stay tuned. Coming up next is Quirks and Quarks.